Hello and welcome to Cage Club. Two fans, more than 100 movies, one cage. This is episode 120, Longlegs from 2024. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
And I'm Mike Manzi.
And Mike with us, and a very special guest, returning to the show, our self-proclaimed, let's see how he described himself. We texted too much. It's like Cage Horror something or other. I don't know.
Consultant?
Dr. Chris Podcast is back now. Hello, Dr. Chris.
Nicolas Cage was not on stilts, nor was he a Slender Man. 005, worst movie ever.
In pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree. In theaters now, written and directed by Osgood Perkins, who did Blackcoat's Daughter, Gretel and Hansel, Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Also the Nepo baby of Anthony Perkins.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes more sense. Hey, and I just realized, I think the last time we were together was Color Out of Space.
It
So,
was.
the gang is back.
Oh, he also, I think, watched Mandy with us, right? Were you there in the house?
No, that was Brian, I believe.
Was that Brian?
Yeah, that was not.
That was late night.
You son of a bitch.
I just remember it was in your house. Produced by 6 different people, including Cage. Shout out to Saturn Films. 13 executive producers. Shot by Andres Orochi. Budget, I don't know. But it made $22.6 million. The best gross for an independent horror movie in a decade. Cage's biggest opening weekend in a leading role, which is debatable. I don't know if he's a lead role, since National Treasure Book of Secrets. So pretty long. 87 on Rotten Tomatoes, 68 by the fans, 78 on Metacritic. I have some trivia about this, but before we get into that, big year for Cage.
Yeah, already. Pretty nice to see him back in theaters.
Rocking a double horror feature in just the last couple of weeks, right?
Oh, yeah. He had the... Those crazy animals in Arcadian? Is that what
Arcadian?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now this, where he plays the white man. I don't know. Longlegs. He's like a big old, he's the white guy.
He plays Tiny Tim as a serial killer.
Ooh, great call, Doc.
Wait, I have news. I forgot that I have news. I have news and I have links.
Beep, 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 beep. That's the news intro.
Oh, I know. Okay. So first off, there's, because this movie's out, people are talking about Nicolas Cage a lot. There was a thing, Sage at Spherection, sure, on Twitter, posted a thing that said, they posted a screenshot from Letterboxd and said, "Ayo, I didn't know Nicolas Cage could act." And then Sage saying, "Me when I haven't seen a movie with Nicolas Cage in it." And then someone named Autumn quote tweeted that. I don't know if either of you saw this. This went viral because of the response to this. But Autumn said, Nicolas Cage is a bad actor. That's where his ironic popularity came from on the internet all those years ago. He's like the movie The Room in human form. People like him because he's bad. But then I think the reason that really went viral is because of this quote tweet of that, just saying from Kyle, who said, Academy Award winner actor Nicolas Cage is in fact a good actor. And his ironic popularity came from an irony-poisoned population that couldn't understand his completely unironic and fully engaged performances any other way, which I think is a beautifully well-put thing. Our guest, as someone who is irony-poisoned, what do you think of that?
The person who said that Cage is a bad actor, tell me you were 7 when the How Did It Get Burned memes happened without telling me you were 7.
Yeah.
Like, the only people who think that Cage is actually bad only know him from compilations from The Wicker Man.
Yeah, that's what this got me thinking about, too, is that, the generation has come, the next generation has come now to discover him. Joey, believe it or not, next year it'll have been a decade that we'll have been doing Cage Club.
I know.
Okay, and remember the Discord back then. This, so it's the cycle, right? And I just think now there's more proof to put these people in their place a lot quicker. I mean, they can still have their opinion. I'm not going to rob them of that. But I just think that the proof is out there.
There was another tweet that was going viral yesterday. This is a clip, like a screenshot of something that Roger Ebert wrote, obviously a long time ago, because rest in peace, Roger Ebert. But he said, and Cage, there are often lists of the greatest living male movie stars, De Niro, Nicholson, and Pacino, usually. How can you see the name of Nicolas Cage? He should always be up there. He's daring and fearless in his choice of roles, and unafraid to crawl out on a limb, saw it off, and remain suspended in air. No one else can project inner trembling so effectively. Recall the opening scenes in Leaving Las Vegas. See him in Scorsese's Bringing Out the Dead. Think of the title character in The Weatherman. Watch him melting down an adaptation. And then remember that he can also do a parachuting Elvis impersonator, Honeymoon in Vegas. A wild rock and roller, Wild at Heart. A lovesick one-handed baker, Moonstruck. A straight arrow Secret Service agent, guarding Tess, and on and on.
A lottery ticket-splitting police officer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert, fan of Nicolas Cage and big titties. We have things in common. So
Roger Ebert also gave Too Fast, Too Furious either 3 or 3.5 stars, and loved Too Fast. So
respect.
shout out to my
R.I.P. Pour one out to Big Ebes.
Unrelated to that, I just like seeing people talking about Cage in a way that you know. Mike, his movie The Surfer, which we've known about for a while, sold to Lionsgate and Roadside Attractions, so that will be out. That's apparently very good. Did well at Cannes.
Sounds good. Sounds unhinged.
Nicolas Cage in an interview said he is terrified, quote unquote, terrified of AI. Quote, what are you going to do with my body and my face when I'm dead? So he talked to The New Yorker about this and said, I have to slip out after this to go get a scan done for the show, talking about Spider-Man Noir, and then also for the movie I'm doing after the show. 2 scans in one day. They have to put me in a computer and match my eye color and change. I don't know. They're just going to steal my body and do whatever they want via digital AI. God, I hope not. AI, I'm afraid of that. I've been very vocal about it.
There's contracts, you don't, just don't sign anything away, in perpetuity, right?
Well, there is the movie The Congress, which stars Robin Wright, where she sells her likeness away, which is
that was great. That's 15 years.
I know that's
old by
early,
now.
That's 2012, just spot on.
That statement makes me think that Nicolas Cage has no idea he's in The Flash.
Well, I was thinking of that too, is because when that came out, he said he didn't film that. He just filmed himself staring into a void, basically, but he never fought a spider. So he was like, did they AI me or was what? And I was like, I think they just CGI'd him. I don't know.
Was it him or Tim Burton? But they were, at least one of them was just like, that was bad. No, I don't want that.
Tim Burton was like, hey, how could you do that to my Batman and my Superman I never made? And then everyone else was like, but he finally fought the big spider. That's all I cared about.
And the final thing, Mike, this is, Chris, this is something we've been tracking for a while, because 4 movies ago, Cage was like, I got 3 more movies in me. And we're like, okay.
It's been more than
Tarantino is on his last movie. His last movie will be his last movie probably 5 times.
But Cage has made 6 since this announcement, Joey. It's
so great. This is from last week. It says Nicolas Cage updates retirement timetable plan. It says he has, quote, 3 or 4 more lead roles left.
What does that? I mean, I know what that means, but what does that mean? Because he's always in the lead as far as it's a Nick Cage movie. Even this movie, he's not the lead, but it's being sold that come see Nick Cage.
Well, even though he's not in the trailers, really, which there's some trivia about that.
But he's not even really in the movie, really.
Right. So this thing from Deadline says, in an interview from last year, he was, quote, starting to cement his plan about retirement, telling Vanity Fair, quote, I may have 3 or 4 more movies left in me. But in that same interview with The New Yorker, he said, quote, I did 2 or 3 very supporting roles, so maybe 3 or 4 more lead roles. Maybe that's more what I was saying. It would have been a slippery slope. I think it could have lapsed into something almost too ridiculous. You don't want to see if the shark is made of rubber, do you? You want the shark to be terrifying and keep it under the water for it. So that's what he's talking about with Longlegs. He's just like...
Oh, the Jaws approach.
Look, I could have been the star of this movie, but you don't want to see that much of me. You want to keep it, hidden.
He's gone that route before by trying to, support the supporting actors more and take a back seat a little bit in other roles. We've heard that as well.
Well, the thing that's true about, him, about Shia, about a handful of the people we've covered or we've almost covered... They're better in supporting roles. Not that they're bad in leading roles, but when you're able to really fully uncork in a supporting role, it's go for it.
Yeah. Right.
Supporting roles do seem to give you more leeway into getting weird with it. I feel like that's why we all love our character actors, right? Our Tobos and our Tobolowsky and actors like that. They can get. There's a reason why everyone says, "Hey, it's that guy." They're in roles that maybe they're not leads, but everyone remembers these, 10 or 12 actors that are just so great at being character actors in supporting roles. And I'm not saying that Cage needs to fall into that, but I think he probably does like the freedom of being able to show up for a couple of days, get really weird with it, and, pay off his 5th house that he bought in New Orleans or his pyramid.
Yeah, I think that also works well too when you're doing like a villain role. Those are generally second build for the most part, and until recently, I feel, well, maybe it goes back there. There's always sort of like that struggle for top billing, right? But I mean, in this playing the villain, I think it gives him the opportunity to sort of contain himself for most of the movie, and then like has that opportunity to explode when needed. And like he definitely does a lot with a little in this, and I mean a little because he is like he doesn't even have any color to him. He's monochromatic white, and like he doesn't even give himself that, right? He's like, I'm just playing something without any, I'm a black and white guy, right? Or whatever. Like I thought that was very interesting. They just like sucked all the color out of this character. Yeah. So even that, to that degree, he's like, I don't even want, one color to me, please, the whole character.
So, Mike, I'm looking at his IMDb. So we have The Surfer, which is on movies that have come out because that's released at film things.
That's a lead.
Film festivals. That's a lead.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that doesn't count as one of the 3 or 4 because he's already made that, right? But like, he's got at least 2, if not 3 more things in his upcoming that I've never heard of that like hasn't been. So there's The Gunslingers, which maybe I know, but that's a Western probably. There's a thing called The Prince, which I have no idea what that is.
Hopefully
there's
it's
Spider Noir, which is the TV series, which I guess doesn't count. There's a thing called The Carpenter's Son, which I don't know what that is. There's Lords of War, which you knew about, and then there's Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, which we knew about.
Okay, I think The Carpenter's Son is a biblical thing where
we talked about that last time. Okay, The Gunslingers, I've seen art for this.
Okay,
I've seen him in his crazy hat.
I just need him to go to space theatrically before he retires. It's the one. I can't believe he's never been to space.
The Prince is written by David Mamet, also starring J.K. Simmons. Okay. And then, yes, I think you were saying The Carpenter might be a Jesus thing.
Right. I'm not sure Jesus specific, but biblical related.
But we have at least 2 of these where he's the... Who knows, man?
Mm-hmm.
He's never going to stop. I know he's never going to stop. You know what I mean? So
I don't know if he can stop.
Well, yeah, why stop though? Like, imagine in 20 years he'll just be so much more interesting as like a really old guy. Look how wild Jeff Goldblum got. Like,
Sure.
He started out so weird, and now he's like even weird to the max. Like,
I think it depends. I don't think you want to cross that line where you become, a De Niro or Pacino, where someone just like kind of carts you out to do your thing and then puts you back in your cryostasis.
Yeah, I feel like Walken narrowly avoided that. They kind of like wheeled him out for Dune, but only part 2 and only for like 1 or 2 things. But like, yeah, I feel like he's like kind of respectfully bowed out of the spotlight recently for the most part.
Yeah, or Tommy Lee Jones, kind of like I think you can be an elder statesman or you can be a joke, and I think it's a fine line to walk. And I think Cage kind of defaults to almost falling into that Pacino De Niro category just on paper. But I think he could avoid that. I think he absolutely can. And I think he's probably cognizant of his meme status and wants to avoid that.
There's a thing with him and with them where it's just like, I think they just like want to work. Like it just...
Sure.
Or they have kids and they need to.
Well,
Pacino just had another kid.
Christ sakes, yeah.
So here's some trivia about Longlegs.
Cool.
Oz Perkins' request of not using Cage on the posters or in the trailer, despite him playing the titular character, led Neon to come up with a creative plan to promote and sell the movie without depending on Cage. So like that's just like, it's all Micah Monroe, right? Just...
Yeah.
Beautiful. Apparently, both Cage and Perkins made this as a tribute to their mothers, which feels strange. Like, that reminds me of Sleepaway Camp to Mom, a Dreamer. It's like, this movie should not be dedicated to your mom.
It's like Ari Aster saying Beau is Afraid is dedicated to his mom. It's just like, yikes-a-roo.
That makes a little... I think that might be a little bit of a jab at his mom. Like, this, I heard Cage talk about, for the very first time, actually, since, like, Inside the Actor Studio, mention his mother in press and say that he got the inspiration for the look of the character from when she would put on like cold cream on her face. This is like the 60s, right? So like women still wore like maybe they still do, and she would like turn around and scare him like with this like completely white face on with makeup and stuff. And so I think that's where we got it. But she also like spent a lot of time in hospitals for mental illness and stuff. So I think just trying to draw maybe from some of those memories as well.
Maybe I have if that's Mom, thanks for this, I'm going to be Longlegs because of you. Like, sure. I think the most famous, most known, most widely told story about the making of this movie is that Micah Monroe did not know what he looked like until she saw him in that room for the first time.
Oh.
So, Chris, did you hear about this?
I just saw an interview with her where she talks about how he was not on set for too long, or at least not with her. And when he was totally method because he wanted to keep them freaked out by him.
Yes. So he was method on set, which is always a little bit annoying for any actor to be method
Yeah.
because just like, it's a job. But she wore like a chest microphone, like a wire, like I guess like a regular, police wire essentially, but like, like a little lav mic, and it captured her heartbeat. So her resting heartbeat was 76 BPM. And then when she saw him, it spiked to 170 BPM.
Wow.
And so they used her heartbeat that it recorded in the final trailer for the movie. She said, quote, "It was insane. It was absolutely insane. He completely transformed. There's no trace of Nick in there, his voice, his mannerisms. He was very much method on the set. It was in character, and it's a very disturbing character, to say the least."
Yeah, I mean, it is. Some would say like his intro in the movie is a bit of a, the jump scare intro is a bit of a. I worked on me, but I was like, jump scare kind of thing. But like when you see him, it is unsettling. Like that unsettled me for a good like 15, 20 minutes of the opening movie where I was still trying to like, get my bearings. And then he shows up again and it's like, oh dear Lord. What is that?
Mike, you said he was monochromatic, and I agree. He is a quite literally a pale creature throughout this movie. But I do really feel like because everybody, and we'll get into talking about plot and theme and all of that stuff, but he does really, he's the color of this movie where everyone is playing so subdued and so dark and so restrained. He really does bring those splashes of liveliness to the film as a whole. It is a breath of fresh air anytime he's on screen, and he really does command your attention when he does show up. You really, and I mean, you can't really ask for a better actor to do that, frankly.
Yeah.
So the only other actor that Oz Perkins considered for the role was Brad Pitt.
No. I don't
Shoot
know.
for the stars, Oz. Shoot for the stars.
I mean, the only thing I associate Brad Pitt with, not even really, I mean, this kind of performance is like 12 Monkeys, but I don't know if I just worked really well for whatever reason, like character wise. But like, I like what Chris was saying. Maybe that's it. Maybe Cage is just dialed into being able to go big when everyone else isn't. And it's very relatable to like the movie as well, with all like the dolls and the doll theme and the idea that like, the people would be sort of doll like, that they don't move very much. And he is the doll maker and sort of Satan's helper. So like he would be a little more mobile and all that kind of thing. So it's, like it works for the movie. It's not just Cage going nuts for no reason.
Right. The only other trivia that I have, and then we can start talking about the movie, but this is something that I know that Chris had mentioned to me about, and I don't know how far down this rabbit hole you went, Chris, but to promote the film, Neon created a phone number, 458-666-4355, which, if dialed, will play a pre-recorded, extremely disturbing message from Nicolas Cage as the killer. But Chris was saying to me that there was like a whole ARG, like alternate reality game for this movie that basically not gave away plot points, but just like clued you into what the movie was about. Is that fair to say?
I watched I put on in the background as though it was a podcast, a 2-hour YouTube video that kind of deep dived into the ARG. And it was entirely based around the flashes in the Instagram and Twitter kind of promos that were released before even a teaser came out. And it was the same, I don't know if it was exactly the same, but it was a cipher, Zodiac-esque as is used in the film. And if it was figured out, you got Bible passages and poems and things like that. And the video I watched, which I'll try to send it to you just to put in the notes for the episode, so I don't completely not credit the people who put the actual work in. But they basically figured out from that, and just from a quote of Nicolas Cage saying he was playing, I forget the exact words, but he was playing like an unhinged Geppetto or something like that in this movie, is what Cage apparently said. And from that, they were able to kind of figure out a huge amount of the plot of the movie, just from what the ARG was giving away. As you mentioned, no Cage in any of the promos. And I think the combination of the ARG and some really great trailer editing is the thing that made this, a number 2 at the box office. I think that was triple the projections. of what it was. I think it was set to make like 7 to 8 million, and it made 22. I think it's old school marketing, Blair Witch esque, and I think it's not hard to market a horror movie like this. It's just your studio execs don't want to put thought into it. They just want a trailer house to cut a movie to a slow, sad cover of a song. And yeah, no, that the ARG, that's how you rope the kids in these days. You make it seem like I know I joked about Slender Man earlier on, but you kind of do that, and you get people hyped up when they can follow a rabbit hole.
Hey, the Lost ARG. I was there.
Yeah,
it was
the
great.
Batman, Dark Knight ARG.
I'd go back now and look at it, knowing more about like having seen the movie. Yeah, my theater was packed.
Same.
I went on a Saturday at 1 p.m.
Actually.
and there's like 100 people there.
Yeah, I had a very full theater. Philadelphia at about mid afternoon on a Saturday. I was shocked how crowded it was.
I am obviously happy that it did well, but I'm surprised it did well because I felt like everything I'd been seeing on the internet and trailers and promotions from Maxine, which I think was the week before, and then I'm just like, oh, like I saw trailers for this, I knew people were excited about this, but like I kind of thought that like people were excited about it like in our little sphere, you know what I mean? Or just like people are excited for the Cage thing, but then for it to just do so well was very cool. So shout out to that.
I've only seen one movie this year in theaters, which was Abigail. And since then, before that was Priscilla. And I got to say, like, whoever's cutting promos for horror movies now is doing a great job. Give him a raise, because every trailer I saw, I was like, I want to see this. I want to see this. I have no idea what's going on. This looks great because they're giving me nothing. I want to see this. So, like, maybe there are lessons being learned, by the marketing and all that. Hopefully the movies, though, that's the thing. Are the movies strong enough to hold up?
Well, I mean, shout out to, like, Neon is good. So, like, shout out to Neon for knowing what they're doing. And, past guest of the show, Greg McLennan, used to work there for a while. So, like, they hire good people. They know what they're doing. They make good movies. They market them well. So,
They just picked up Chris Stuckman's. If you're a YouTube guy, you're probably familiar with him. His horror film just got picked up by Neon for distribution. So they seem to be kind of doing the A24 model a little bit, which is certainly not a bad one. Excited to see stuff coming out from Neon. In a way, I think over the last decade, Marvel kind of burned everyone out on cinema, like going to the movies. That coupled with COVID, coupled with, things being released to streaming after like 2 weeks, gonna be like kids movies and horror movies that are kind of winning the box office. Terrifier 3 is gonna make $300 million fucking dollars opening weekend. Like, it's gonna be, I mean, not really, but like I feel like the only appointment things to go to the theater for anymore, parents shutting their kids up for 2 hours or horror movies and that group experience.
I saw a thing that said that they project one of the big consulting I think maybe KPMG projects that like the box office not next year but the year after 26 is going to be bigger than like the biggest since before. Like, it's going to be back to pre-COVID numbers. So I don't know if that's because I think there's a combination of like there's COVID that happened for a while, then there was the writer's strike, and like all these different things have like upended the release schedule. And I think I mean, to your point, Chris, you're right. Like, there's a lot of indie movies that are in theaters and like I really want to see, but I'm just like, I can see it at home in 3 weeks. Like, it's like, why do I? But like something like Twisters, which is coming out this week, I'm like, I could see Twisters. I could wait. Like, I'm not super excited to see Twisters, but like, I want to see Twisters in a theater because like
it's big.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because like Joey, I feel like the opposite for some reason. Like, I feel like Marvel kind of burned me out on action to a degree where it's like I'll wait on that. Like I waited on like Fury Road, Planet of the Apes, Ghostbusters. Like, I love those movies, but like I just was like, that's not what I want to go to the theater for. Like, it's more for sort of I was reminded that like, oh yeah, like quiet, weird, offbeat stuff also is out there too, and it's not necessarily the stuff that gets kind of shall we say like priority in my algorithms these days, right?
But also, don't get me wrong, I still go to the movies like once a week. Like, I'm still seeing a bunch of stuff in theaters. Like, it's not like I'm not seeing indie movies because they're coming out soon, but it's just like, if I can see this or this, what am I going to say? Whatever. But
right.
All right, enough about that. Let's talk about Longlegs. Mike, what do you think of Longlegs?
I liked it. I thought it was creepy as hell. I thought it looked gorgeous. Right, like this, they definitely know how to shoot this movie. I didn't think it was perfect. Like, there's some stuff about it that I felt could have maybe been structured a little differently, not better necessarily. Just like it wasn't quite traditional in the sense that I thought it was going to be, you know, but I did enjoy its sort of True Detective X-Files-y kind of nature and, you know, just sort of skimming the surface of things. I had a kind of a Twin Peaks: The Return vibe halfway through this movie as well. So like lots of influences that I liked kind of coalescing here with Cage. And the whole Satan thing was you know, great. You know, not enough black metal horror making these kinds of bucks at the box office, but overall, yeah, I had a good time watching a very disturbing movie.
Dr. Chris, I know that you came out of it feeling you were super hyped. You texted me afterwards, then you kind of came around in a little bit. But what do you think originally, and then where are you right now?
I think this was a victim of hype.
For sure.
I came out of that thinking, did I hate that movie? I slapped 2 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. I changed it to 2.5.
As you are wont to do for most movies.
Here's the thing. Usually I overrate stuff in the immediate aftermath and like knock it down half a star. This has been progressively creeping up. I think I've settled on about 3, which is kind of the cycle of Oz Perkins movies. And I think we do have to kind of talk about him as a director in general, because this feels very in the filmography. He has a very specific style that does not connect with me. And I think in some ways that's on purpose. I think he makes very cold movies, movies that leave the audience feeling distant. Again, I think the last movie that I had this kind of reaction to weirdly was Knives Out, of all things. And I think that's because people were like, oh, it's the next Clue. And I was like, I love Clue. I can't wait to see it. And people were like, this is the next Silence of the Lambs. And I was like, I love Silence of the Lambs. I can't wait to see Longlegs. And then it was not the movie that I was expecting.
Right.
So I walked out of that being like, what the fuck? But it's lived in my head like a fucking silver phantasm ball. The whole last couple of days, I haven't stopped thinking about it. There's a lot of moments and scenes that I'm replaying in my head, and I kind of can't stop thinking about it. And I think this is a movie that will really, truly benefit from a second watch. And yeah, I can't wait to deep dive in it because, like I said, it's been really living in my head for a while, and I have so many thoughts about it that I need to bounce off somebody.
I think, so I went into it, I think this movie, you're right, was a victim of hype. I think it was, like, every single thing about it was, this is the scariest movie you'll ever see. This is the scariest movie that's ever been made. I'm like, no, it's not going to be. There's no way that it's going to be.
Yeah, I didn't hear any of that because I didn't watch any trailers. So.
No, but it wasn't trailers. It was just, like, reviews, and it was Twitter,
reviews,
and it was everything.
Yeah.
It was just, like, people talking about this were just like, it's like,
right.
And then, like, I said to Chris, like, one thing that I wish I didn't have spoiled for me was that either Variety or Deadline interviewed Alicia Witt, who plays Micah Monroe's mom, and I love her from other things. Like, she was all the way back to Twin Peaks. She played the little girl who sang and danced and whatever. Anyway, but she was like, I couldn't watch myself. This is the one movie of mine I won't watch because I didn't like what came out of me. I'm just like, well, so I know that she's going to be like evil, and like she's not evil until the last like 20 minutes. I'm just like, that kind of ruined it for me. Even avoiding spoilers, just like that quote in a headline ruined it. Whatever. But I sort of like tamped down expectations. I'm like, this is not going to be super scary, I don't think, but I'm hoping for the vibe of, like you said, Mike, X-Files or like Mindhunter, where it's just like procedural, dark, moody, atmospheric, whatever, and it was, and that's all that did it for me. I will say, I'm gonna ruffle feathers, I know.
All right.
I'm just thinking about that John Wick 4 episode we did where we're just like, not great, we didn't love it, and then
just a lot of people
like,
off somehow.
Here's all the things. It's just like, okay.
I was like, they're listening?
I don't love this Cage. I'm tired of Cage doing the Cage thing. I'm tired of him screaming and shrieking and squealing. He's such a good actor. We read the things before. He's so good in Pig. And like, it just seems like they got him to do the Cage thing. And I think, when we watched Renfield, I was like, I'm so worried about Cage. And like, I should have been worried about the movie because Cage was great. The movie was kind of lousy. Here, I don't think Cage is bad. It's just like, I feel like they're like, do your thing, do the thing,
well,
do the scream, do the overacting thing. And I'm just tired of that because like I know that he has more. Like he could be creepy.
Yeah.
And he was creepy, like he was weird, but it's also him doing the thing that we've seen him do a lot. And back in the day was fine, was fun, was cute, whatever. And then it feels like every movie now seems to have that one moment where it's like in Mom and Dad, like him doing the hokey pokey and like destroying the pool table or whatever. Just like,
Yeah.
you're letting him just go full Cage, and it's like, I get it, people want it, people love it, and
Yeah.
it's good and it works, but like, I'm tired of it.
It's funny. This is the same thing you said about Color Out of Space Cage, you
Yep.
know, and I tend to agree with you more on that one. For this, the way I wasn't even look, it crossed my mind in the car, like it felt like an outtake when he was like screaming
Yeah, when he's-
motherfucker and all that
yes.
kind of shit. Like that didn't feel necessary. I agree. However, if you take a look at what he's done over the last year or two, like he's been containing himself for lack of a better word, you know, and it's just. I'm not saying this is necessarily the time to let loose, but this could be, you know, this is the time to kind of
for sure. No, I mean, like it's hard. It's supposed to be over the top, right? Like I get that, but it's also like I think it's like the highest profile thing he's done in a few years, and like it's but
like so is Pig, right? And it's like people will go watch that and be like, oh my gosh, like he's fucking amazing, and like where was his nomination that year or whatever? But like. I don't disagree with you 100%. You know, I think that it rode a fine line that for me as like a fan like you was like that felt a little over the top, but I did quite enjoy his like the interrogation scene and all that stuff, and like I felt that was quite necessary for the performance. But like, you know, not an unreasonable issue there,
and it didn't ruin the movie. Like I don't want to say like it ruined the movie, and I don't want to say that like he was bad in it or that people should not enjoy him. I'm just like, he's so good, and just to go back to that thing, it's like, okay,
yeah, Cage. I genuinely believe Cage has like a card catalog of actual living people that he's like, I want to do that. Because, I mean, you mentioned Color Out of Space, and we kind of felt like he was doing like a weird Jimmy Stewart vibe in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck was that movie that I think I was on the episode for, or I just watched it, where he's, for some reason, doing Tony Clifton, the Andy Kaufman character, as like a gangster. He's in the movie for like 10 minutes at the most.
Was it a newer movie? Are you talking about like Arsenal? Or are you talking about
he did
like
that twice.
Sonny?
Arsenal. I remember he's mostly in like a dingy strip club.
Deadfall, maybe is either Deadfall or Arsenal recently.
He's got a fake nose, and he's very clearly doing Tony Clifton. And this again, I feel like he's doing like glam rock Tiny Tim. And I just feel like, I feel like if he wasn't going to do that in this movie, he had that in the chamber for like something. You know, like he's been working on that character in the shower for a while, and he just pulled it out for this one. And and I think that is part of my disappointment is I was expecting like a dark, serious Nick Cage serial killer versus the FBI, and I got that, and you know I wasn't disappointed in it. I enjoyed his weird kind of. I think he was kind of making himself into a doll in a weird way, and again we'll get into the plot and talk about that. Cage is pulling out something from his bag of tricks, and it's like, oh, we hired Cage for the weird instead of hiring Cage for the leaving Las Vegas Nick Cage that, you know, I think we all kind of fell in love with versus the meme.
And look, I would rather have this where he's doing like full Cage in a good movie than have him be really good in a movie that is lousy, right? Like I'd rather have this 10 times out of 10. But I think I want like smart Cage being like, not like Kevin Spacey in Seven, but more like that where it's just like, no, I'm like unsettling because I look and seem normal. But
no, I hear you. Like I would rather him be here than Brad Pitt doing something like this because I'm used to. I am kind of like half expecting it when it happens. If Brad Pitt started doing what Cage is doing in this movie, I don't quite know if I'd have the same or as positive a reception to it. You know, maybe that's the other thing too, is sort of the association. Like it's such a bizarre kind of character. It's like I have to kind of quantify it with Cage himself, the actor, doing something under all that stuff. But the other thing is like, I don't want him being an FBI agent in this movie either. Like Blair Underwood's amazing in this movie. You know?
I don't want him like, I want him to be a killer. I want him
exactly
to be a killer.
Like, and I don't know. It's just
But again, I will say I think he's good. I think he's good, and I think the movie's really good. I think Micah Monroe is great. I mean, I've loved her. Like, I think she is so good as the like sort of disaffected, not really a people person. Like the scene where she is, where Blair Underwood's daughter is like, "Do you want to come see my room?" And then they cut to her like the most uncomfortable sitting on the bed, like I don't want to be here, but just like sitting in a little girl's room, just like looking at her dolls. I'm like,
Yeah.
that is so funny. Like, I think that she's so good in this entire movie, and I love. I mean, obviously, It Follows and The Guest are two of my favorite movies of all time. So I love just her, but I think she's great in this movie. I think she's better in this movie than maybe any other movie that I've ever seen her in. I think she's really, really good in the Lee Harker role.
What's that movie where she's not a lead, but I think she's kind of stole the movie? Chloe Grace Moritz is getting Fatal
Greta?
Attraction. Yeah. I think she's in a pretty small role in that movie, but she's really, really, really good.
Well, she's the roommate, and like Chloe Grace Moretz is getting stalked by Isabelle Huppert,
Yes.
which is it just
Oh, I
that
think I've
movie
seen
rules.
that.
Isabelle Huppert was supposed to be in a movie with Cage, and I think she dropped out or he dropped out or something. I was like, man, I want to see like one of the best French actresses who also sometimes goes crazy in a movie with Cage. Like, yeah, please.
Half the time I thought this was the girl from Fallout. Part is just the big, beautiful eyes, I guess, on them these days and all that. But like, I think part of the other thing for me that struck me about this movie is like it's a very specific directing style.
Yeah.
It's very precise and all this, and it's like I don't want to sound like flippant or anything, but if that's the right term, but like you could almost cast anybody in the other roles and to a degree. I think Blair Underwood's bringing a little something extra that I don't like, some kind of swagger or some kind of whatever than anyone else. Like he's a little more active in the frame. He's like always he's like drinking something or writing something, whereas like everyone else seems to be like kind of perfectly still. So like I think for that type of acting, I think everyone else is very serviceable. Like things don't really pop off until the very end. And when they do, they get super intense. But I would say the one other role is Sabrina, the teenage witch. She has maybe the one scene where it's like, all right, this is like acting school. Like, you can kind of isolate this as a performance and say,
Wait, what? Sabrina?
The girl who played Sabrina, the teenage
Kiernan
witch.
Shipka.
Yeah.
Oh,
she was in, like, the
new
assignment.
Sabrina, not Melissa Joan Hart. You're talking about new
Oh,
Sabrina.
sorry. Yeah. Melissa. Oh, I forgot about old. Sorry. I don't want to say old Sabrina, but like
The Nick
first
Vakaya's
Sabrina.
Salem the cat.
Yes.
R.I.P. Martin Mull.
No, Kiernan Ship. Wait. Kiernan Shipka was in this movie?
She's
Yeah,
the girl in the mental hospital. The survivor of the
survivor.
camera family, yeah.
Right.
Wow. Okay, because I know that Kiernan Shipka was in Blackcoat's Daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen any of his other movies either. I just realized that.
I saw the movie at Fantastic Festival. It's called February, not to brag, but also to brag. And I thought that was great. I'm just like, this guy's got it. And then Pretty Thing Lives in the House, I think has good performances. I don't know if I love the movie. Then I didn't love Hansel and Gretel, or Gretel. Is it Gretel and Hansel?
It is Gretel and Hansel, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't love that. I thought that was like a wannabe A24 movie. But
It
this,
is
I was
kind
like,
of
no,
wannabe
this is
Witch, yeah.
like, I think Chris and I are in agreement that like, at least collectively, we both recommend Blackcoat's Daughter. I think you recommend the other two as well, but
Yeah, I guess maybe it's time to talk about Nepo Baby Oz Perkins, who looks exactly like his dad. It's unsettling. And can I take a brief short tangent here, and just to speak to you guys and the audience about the power of spoilers and the idea that some people think that there should be a statute of limitations on spoilers. After when I was talking to my partner, who's not a horror fan, we were going to see this movie. I was dragging her to it. She didn't know anything bad, and I was like, "Oh, it's directed by Anthony Perkins' kid. He's made some good horror movies." And she's like, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, he was in Psycho. He's Norman Bates." And she's like, "Oh, I had only seen Vertigo until you showed me Rear Window. I've never seen Psycho." And I was like, "Oh, well, you know about it." And she's like, "Oh yeah, the shower scene." And I was like, "Well, you know the twist, right?" And she's like, "No, I don't." So just, for those of you out there who thinks that everyone knows that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad, there's someone who doesn't. So there's no statute of limitations on spoilers, okay?
or there's
motherfuckers?
movies like Maxine where they pull into the lot and it's like Bates Motel. It's like, you know where we are? We're where they shot Psycho. It's just like, yeah, because babies like Gen Z and Gen Alpha don't know at all what Psycho is. So I think it's hard for people like us who have seen too many movies to just assume that people have like a baseline understanding of things.
Oh yeah.
Just osmosis. I would think that just from osmosis of pop culture or watching The Simpsons,
No.
like, half of the twists just from seeing parodies of it, but apparently no.
It's funny that this actually has come up at work recently, where it's like there's one artist at the shop. He's 29. There was another artist for a period of time. She was 23. He got all the references. They're from the same they're close enough, but everything flew over her head. She didn't know what Saved by the Bell was, whereas he was making AC Slater jokes and things. So it's like, I think he studied in a way, right? Like he grew up watching tons of shit. And I guess she's just needed more time to catch up yet, or it's just,
Yeah,
it's weird though. I've run into that a lot more lately because I'm dealing with people like throughout the entire spectrum of age at my work now.
Well, that's also a thing where it's like, and this is maybe excuses, but like I have friends like, like Mike, you are 25 years older than me. No, like you're
No.
like you're 8 years older than I am. So
I was like, am I?
but like I started watching movies late, but it's also you've had just more time. Like even if we watch the same number of movies per year, you've had 8 extra years of watching movies. You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
even if you're not watching a ton of movies, it's like they're still watching a bunch of movies.
Or references and shit like
Exactly.
when I grew up that were gone when you were, even things that are just like flashes, they're just here one day and gone the next. It's like, you really got to search for that reference still. It's like, yeah.
I certainly saw the Simpsons parody of The Shining before this. I saw The Shining.
And some kids saw Ready Player One before they watched The Shining. So,
And I mean, it just goes to show who was a film nerd virgin in high school and who fucked in high school. And everyone who is on this podcast and is listening to this podcast did not fuck in high school.
I can affirm.
Anyway, let's move on from.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so I got into that. So Oz Perkins movies, yeah. There's like a cycle where I watch his movies and I leave them and I'm like, I got nothing out of that. And then there's stuff that just sticks with me. There's this cycle. All of his movies are beautifully shot. First off, they are directed from fucking hell to breakfast. And I would say the Maika Monroe stuff you were talking about is, I think she was directed down to the beat. Like she was conducted in an orchestra and he let Nick Cage play jazz. All of his movies are gray and cold and in some ways almost shot like a documentary where you are like an objective viewer of this supernatural event that is occurring and you can't connect with any of the characters. You're just along for the ride. And I feel like that happened again, but every time it's like it's a situation that's begging you to connect to the character so you can feel something, and I don't. And that's why I can never. To me, he hasn't risen to the level of a new modern horror master like Eggers or Astor has, because every one of his movies leaves me so cold and distant, and that is, I think, the biggest fault of this movie is that I couldn't feel anything during it. I guess I'm a porcelain doll, but I think that's intentional. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's a fault. It's a failing for me as for Oz Perkins as a writer and a director. I'd love to see him direct something he didn't write one day.
It's interesting because those two names were definitely floating around my head watching this, Astor and Eggers and stuff. And it's like the thing about those guys for me is like they've done other stuff. Like they've shown they can kind of tweak their work and they find their style eventually, like it's not like right out of the gate, even though they're great out of the gate and everything. And this movie, while I liked it a whole lot, it still felt like someone sort of searching for their style, maybe in the sense that I was being reminded of contemporaries while watching it, and it wasn't necessarily saying to me in capital bold, like new, right? Like you haven't seen this, like this guy's got twists on stuff that you're going to like. And like, well, I still like the movie and I definitely appreciate the movie. And I definitely love the inclusion of an actual Satan, showing up and like, actually like that, I think to me is the one thing I give it the most credit for, is saying that like slowly throughout the film, supernatural exists. This is the world we live in. And there's proof by the end, and we're left with more questions. So like, I give him a lot of credit for that kind of climactic ending, at least. Whereas like, we kind of I knew it was going to be a movie where most of the audience is going to throw their arms up and go, what? And like, for me, I like that response.
There's been a lot of debate and discourse on Twitter that I'm basically not engaging in because I try not to spend too much time on the internet, but like just, you like one long leg tweet, then Twitter's just like, you want 40 long leg tweets in your FYP? Like, okay. But there was one thing that said, wild to watch. So this is from Jacob Knight, who is maybe he's He's a podcaster, maybe a film critic, I don't know. Wild to watch someone, I mean, we're also podcasters, so what does that mean? Wild to watch someone called Longlegs quote-unquote queer-phobic when all of Perkins's movies, including this one, are on one level or another about him wrestling with his famous father's struggle with remaining in the closet most of his life and how that devastated his whole family. And I think that's something, what you were saying before, Chris, about like writing or directing something he doesn't write. Like I feel like everything is so like auteur-y in a way, like it's about his... what he not dealt with, that seems like negative, but like what he experienced growing up, and to tell someone else's story essentially would be maybe freeing. I don't know.
That's a strong fucking take on this movie, I gotta say.
Well, I think there's a lot of people saying that like the Cage character is queer, and I think that people are like giving that backlash and like.
I thought he was the father, actually. If you want to be,
well,
I was like, "Where's your father? Is that his father?"
You both mentioned about Marvel burning people out or whatever, but I feel like to a certain extent, different crowd, different kind of burn up, but there's been like a backlash to elevated horror, right? Or just like, it's all about trauma, right? It's all about and I think to a certain extent that is fair and valid, and I don't think that every movie has to be about trauma, but I think that there is just like why can't we just see a scary movie? Why do we have to have like a conversation? This is not me, this is just like people online. Like, why do we have to have a conversation online about like whether the character is queer or whether the character is like actually like is, a repression of a mother or whatever. Just like, why can't we just have a guy with knives for hands like slashing people? You know what I mean? Just like
my question is, and this goes a little back to like the Eggers and Astor kind of thing, is like, why does it have to be horror? Like, I don't get me wrong, I love it, but like, this is what...
Beau is Afraid is more comedy than horror. It's just also nightmarish.
All right. Well, why? Well, I'm saying like maybe he needs a new approach, right? And then like, if that doesn't quite turn out to be his thing, you can reappreciate what he's already done, and then be like, oh no, look, like he is actually like quite the genius or whatever after what he's attempted, and maybe hasn't done quite as successfully, but like you never know. Like, what if he channeled all of that into a comedy and like did it straight, or just like a dramatic thing, but like especially with something like Beau is Afraid, like sure, it's horrifying, okay, but like I also feel like it's very subjective in that way. Like, people are going to get so many different things out of that movie, and they're going to laugh at different things, and they're going to sort of like look away at different times and all that stuff. But it, like, that guy feels like he's exploring his life and his trauma, but like he's being more creative than pigeonholing himself, right? The movie's sort of every genre in a way. And like, I don't know, I feel like this guy has that kind of potential. So I hope to see, something bigger from him.
I wonder if that's just like Hollywood not being creative and being like, no, you do horror. Like, don't you do horror? Do horror.
Yeah.
Horror.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, definitely like action directors get pigeonholed too at times. But it's, again, that goes back to like guys like Carpenter. Like, even he did Starman, right? And Starman's brilliant. Like, and then you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, it's not just like he's a great horror director. Like, he's a great director. That's why he makes great horror movies.
Two of the things I did not like about this movie that I'm going to have only compliments from here on out. Number one, I don't like that Alicia Witt's monologue explain. So here's the story. So there is a serial killer who is killing children, all girls, or is it children?
Families?
Targeting.
Good question.
Girls.
I don't know if it's specific. Every victim that we directly see or is referenced in the film is female. I don't know if it's ever strictly said it's specifically daughters. But
so there's a serial killer targeting girls or children born on the 14th of a month, where somehow the father is turned against the family and kills the family, then kills himself. And there's like been the string of these. There are some in the 70s, some in the 90s, or since the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. And so Micah Monroe is Lee Harker. She is kind of a younger FBI agent brought in to figure out what's going on. And it unravels and unfolds, and eventually we find out, spoilers for the end of the movie, even though we've kind of spoiled it, that her mother, played by Alicia Witt, is actually aiding and abetting Longlegs, Nicolas Cage, in sort of perpetrating these murders, because he is a doll maker who is making dolls with like a silver ball in their head, which is, it becomes supernatural, brainwashing the father, essentially, right, to kill his family and then kill himself. And so Alicia Witt shows up as a representative of the church and saying, the church, you won this prize, here's a doll for your daughter. And then she just sits inside while the father goes crazy. Mike Monroe has to figure out how to stop the murders So the two things I don't like is that number one, Alicia Witt explains everything. It's like, we get it. I think we don't need to say any of that. That's another thing where it's just like, movies sort of over-explain sometimes. I think you can sort of skip that entire thing and let people like figure it out after the movie. And this also might be a good thing. It felt inevitable that I was going to end up at Blair Underwood's family. That his daughter in the beginning is just like, "You want to come to my birthday party?" It's just like, well, okay, like yeah, we know, what's the thing, right? So that also might be a good thing where it's like, there's only one possible place this movie could end, and it ends there. So like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just kind of feels obvious. But what do you guys think of the Alicia Witt thing? And were there other nits to pick, or was it otherwise just pretty good?
So it's funny. It's like that twist worked for me. Like I actually, when we just see the Michael Monroe character Lee,
which twist are you talking about? That the mom was
the mom was involved. Yeah, that worked for me because we see like a bit of that scene in the opening, and we're not sure like when and who that is relating to. If that is happening in the present, if that is the past, and it turns out to be the main character's past, like the event that she's sort of like forgotten about. I agree also with the monologuing, like just didn't feel like that kind of movie up to that point, that it needed any kind, that it was leading you on in that way. Like it was doing, like you said, Joe, like I think it was doing such a good job of sort of leading you there step by step, being sort of inquisitive, but not like confusing or anything, that like by the time we get to the reveal, we don't need the explanation. Like that's not the point. But we could still do the flashback. You just do it, without the voiceover. My one thing was like how they dealt with like the psychic stuff. I wish there was like maybe just, more of that intuition thing going. I know we end up realizing that is because her ball is still intact, I think, right? So like she has some sort of like connection to the Cage character, because that's like Satan's power sort of flowing like through her or something. But I like the whole reveal about Satan and all of that. It was very metal. I just wish it was kind of less of it felt kind of like a sharp turn, if you catch my meaning, like it didn't feel like we were really leading entirely there for it to be real, but I'm still satisfied that that's where we went. Like, we see the dark figure in the car a couple times and this and that, but we don't know if that's real. But like that it turns out to be real is great. Yeah, I'm still sort of mulling it over as well. I'm still sort of trying to think about it as we talk about it.
I think there were a few too many moments of really heavy-handed foreshadowing. The "will you come to my birthday" thing, as you mentioned. The moment that she was at her mother's house and saw the cockroach crawling up from under the door, I was like, okay, so that's the basement. And yeah, the fact that it was only ever going to end at Blair Underwood's house, you could see coming from a mile away. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing entirely. Sometimes a movie just doing what it should do is fine. Sometimes you just got to play the hits. At the same time, I think the way the movie was plotted failed it in some ways. I mean, if you took out Blair Underwood and put in assistant director Skinner, and you had like a moment where Mulder and Scully were like, Mulder, a doll doesn't kill people. Well, Scully, some religions believe that a tulpa or a thought form could, and yeah, I felt the same things. I think Mike mentioned the X-Files, Twin Peaks: The Return. I did really feel those influences in this movie in so many ways, in both its themes, its plot, its influences. It felt like a collage, and I never felt like it came together into a single coherent thing for me. And I do wonder if now that I know, on a second watch, I will appreciate it a lot more, and a lot more will kind of come out of that collage, and it will be less abstract. But I just never felt like it rose above the sum of its parts.
Well, I think the second watch, like the biggest thing for me, like when I think I'm going to love a movie and I don't, is that it's not the movie that I expected it to be. Like that's often a thing that like I just ascribe to. Like instead of like taking the movie for what it is, I'm just like, oh no, this is gonna be Silence of the Lambs or whatever, just like because that's what people told it or whatever, right? And she's like, no, it's its own thing. My friend also called it like, he said like it felt like an entire season of True Detective, which kind of also fits, like kind of just crammed into 2 hours or whatever. I will say that Micah doing procedural like research shit, I could watch for hours and hours. Like I think it's so good. Like I just love her like making stacks of pictures on the ground
I actually quite enjoyed the character because of how sort of I don't know, like socially inept she was. I don't know how do we say this politely
I mean,
nowadays.
I think she's autistic. I
I
think
was
she
going
is
to say she's
coded as
autism
autistic.
coded for
All
sure.
right, yeah. I mean, and she's got like this psychic thing going on, so she's definitely like this, strange things happening. And so, like, I really actually enjoyed how that was portrayed, like the way that she got so into it, where she just fell asleep in that weird room at the end of the hallway, and like, I don't know, a lot of it felt like a waking dream as well, where like people are just, oh, we're here now, we're there now, like we're here now, okay, fine. Like I don't know, I just feel like I kept kind of maybe like waking up every couple of minutes, being like, oh, okay.
Like I don't know, man. There's something about like paperwork that I just like journalism stuff, procedural
Yes.
stuff. Like I think part of it's like the X-Files thing, like, but the mind, just like them just figuring stuff out, like in a dark brown room.
I
It's
also
like
got
my
some
favorite kind of thing.
I got some Zodiac vibes from this movie as well.
Yeah, yeah. Like the cipher. Also for
Yeah.
just being like, oh, I cracked it, and just like
Yeah.
not like making a big deal about it or not telling it. He's like, how'd you figure that out? She's like, I can't tell you because otherwise it's gonna cut off my mom's breasts or whatever he said in that note. Like just like obviously he wasn't going to because she's his helper, but Micah doesn't know that. But just like immediately cracking the cipher and being like, oh yeah, this is what it says.
And that's the thing. I do think, and if there was a negative reaction to this movie in that kind of Twitter way that reactions happen, I would have thought it would have been people angry about how Lee Harker was kind of autism coded. But the movie does do that justice by kind of revealing, no, it's not autism. She's dollified almost because of this supernatural entity that is kind of within her. And you really get that in the scene where, and I did, again, this is some direction that I really loved. And there are a couple of moments that are just over directed that I still thought were really incredibly well done. The scene where she is talking to Kiernan Shipka's character, who had just come out of her trance in the mental ward. And this is the kind of the revelatory moment where, this is a movie about trauma, right? Because it's a reverse shot moment, but neither one is looking the other in the eye. They're both looking away, like from each other. They're both looking off camera to the right because they can't look each other in the eye. And that is kind of the first big hint, I think, that they are both affected or possessed in a way by the same thing. And I think going back, there will be all of these clues that set it up. And I guess that's just kind of the thing, is like I said before, I was going into this expecting serial killer versus FBI, and I got Satan versus the FBI, which is, again, where you kind of come out of that being like, oh, X-Files episode. But I respect the movie for taking that strong of a kind of like, yeah, the supernatural's real and it's here and it makes doll things with weird phantasm balls in their head. Fuck you, enter the world or get out. And I think that's just a rough horse to get on, but I think the second one will be good.
Very early in the movie, it establishes that like this is not the world because like she's just like looking in the street, she's like, the killer's in there. She's like, wait, what? Hold on, what? And like she's right, and then you also have her guessing the numbers, and they're like, how'd you get 8 of those right? She's like, well, I got 8 of them wrong too. Like, but it's still like there's something going on with her. Like it's more than just meets the eye. So like from the beginning, the movie's like, no, there's magic in this world, right? So like, I don't mind that it's actually Satan and not just like a killer. I just wish that, for the Cage acting, that it was just like a more grounded thing. But also in terms of like the story, like I think I have no problems at all with that at all.
I kind of like the sort of reversal that Satan kind of blackmailed a sister of the cloth to do part of his dirty work, like she shows up in her whole sisterly gown and everything, and we're from the church, and gives the evil dolls again. Now we're in the season of evil dolls.
Here's a question for you, Mike. Say hypothetically, say your niece, right? You're babysitting your niece, and a woman knocks on the door and just says, "We're from the church. Here, you won this gift." I understand, like, it's the 70s or the 90s or whatever, but would you let a stranger, even one dressed like a nun that you've never seen before, into your home and give her a doll that looks like her?
No. Of course not. But, look at that. Do we know where this takes place? It looks like a very rural community.
Is it Utah or something?
Could be. out there in the middle of freaking nowhere, and they say things like, "Oh, it had to be someone that the people trust."
Oh,
So like
Pacific
they see
Northwest.
Oregon.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So they see someone from the church in that place and time in that day and age, and they welcome them in. Yeah, and that, even that's just not where I live. It's not me.
That I was just reminded of one of my favorite lines in the movie where the cop is just like, I have got to talk to someone about my beautiful mariners. It's just like there's no one around. I'm surrounded by guys who don't give a shit. Like, not guys, just like people who just don't give a shit about sports. And like in the 90s, like in the Bill Clinton era, the Mariners were so much fun. Only reason I say Bill Clinton era is because there's a big old Bill Clinton on the wall, Blair Underwood's wall, right? So it's like that's also very X-Files, like Skinner having Bill Clinton on the wall,
Absolutely.
or Bush on the wall, or whatever. The Mariners are so good. I got to talk to somebody about Ken Griffey Jr. and like nobody around me likes baseball.
Did you expect Cage to kind of come in and out of the movie like he did?
Oh, I loved that he killed himself. Like that really surprised me. Like I thought he was in it till the end, and the fact that he's so another thing is this movie is split into 3 parts, which I like. I always like a sort of episodic kind of story like that. He's probably on screen for 10 minutes, maybe. And like that big scene, like the interview scene is kind of like for lack of a better comparison, like the Dark Knight scene, right? It's like Batman and the Joker, just like this is them meeting face to face for the first time. But like the Joker doesn't kill himself in that scene by smashing his head on the table after saying Hail Satan. It's just like, holy shit. Like that is, and then for them to get mad at her, it's like, that's not her fault.
Yeah. And I think that kind of ties into one of the themes of the movie, right? Which is coming to terms with something that you've buried a long time ago. It's this buried trauma. Like I feel like deep down, Micah Monroe's character, Lee Harker, knows that it's mom, like the whole time. And I feel like even just the way that every time she's on the phone and talks to the mom, she wakes up a little bit. Like I feel like she speaks to her in a different way than she speaks to everybody else. And it does feel like that that buried trauma coming out, and I feel like that's kind of the theme of the movie, right? Is that everyone else is telling you no, it didn't happen, it can't be like this, but deep down, like that is the fact, and you have to come to terms with that. And I think the way that everybody responds kind of fits into that, even if it is. Like at a certain point, yeah, in the movie, everyone needs to be like, "Oh yeah, Satan's real and is here and is doing the thing," but you can't have that, so Lee can have her arc.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting for a character who is like supposedly psychic or has like this advanced intuition to not know that it was her mom the whole time. I mean, she's definitely in denial and makes your unreliable narrator, and just like upon second viewing, like it's going to make it a much more fun watch, with all this like extra stuff. And the thing with Cage, he's barely in part 1. He comes in part 2 and he kills himself immediately, but then he does come back in part 3 with the flashback a little. So it's kind of interesting how like, man, I love movies because like the character can die in the middle of the movie, but also be in the end of the movie. So I like that he came back for a little doff of the old cap to say, hey, I put these balls in dolls' heads.
Where does this rank among recent supporting Cage? We have Dracula in Renfield.
It was the Buffalo Boys when they were doing the buffalo hunt, and what was that?
Oh, you're talking about Butcher's Crossing?
Yeah, Butcher's Crossing.
He's also kind of a supporting character in Arcadian, too. But I'm talking about, like, bigger movies, like, that people...
Right.
Not to be mean, that people have maybe seen.
No, because he's been leading them.
What was the one with The Mandalorian? I think that's probably a lead. I haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Yeah, no, he's, like, the co-lead with that, or he is the lead in that.
I need to see that.
Let's say, rank this, Spider-Man Noir, and then, Mike, our favorite supporting character, we're like... it's not actually a favorite supporting character. We're like, oh, he's really good in that. Snowden as like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's boss.
I mean, he's in the middle. The boss of whatever that.
Yeah.
Snowden's mentor. Like he's on screen even less than this movie. He's in 2 very small scenes smoking cigarettes, and we're like, look, Cage smoked a cigarette, and we were so happy. So yeah, I think this is above that.
Is his all-time best supporting role Big Daddy in Kick-Ass?
Yeah. Yeah,
Also, a good supporting role is Acid Yellow in Sunny, but that's also just his movie.
that's one scene too at the end.
He's the lead in so many. I mean, there's also Never on Tuesday, Man in Red Sports Car.
What was that one with the fighting wife? Not the fighting, but he has a wife, and then the one she couldn't give birth or something. What was it? It was like, remember that one? It's really good, but like he did a series of
Is it
VOD.
new or is it old?
No, it's a couple years old.
Like, but it's like VOD era.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Inconceivable?
Yes,
The best movie of all time?
Yes, I love that title. So good.
Chris, if you had to guess what Inconceivable's about.
That is about Wallace Shawn's character in The Princess Bride.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Or it's about a woman who literally cannot conceive a child.
Sure.
In a very like Lifetime-esque movie. That movie rules.
Not to try to steer it back to Longlegs if you're trying to take it out of it, but there's one scene
No,
that we haven't
it's all
talked
good.
about.
Okay.
And I think the movie does a really good job of, and again, expectations. I came in thinking he was going to be our movie's Buffalo Bill, and I guess in a very loose way he kind of was, but he really wasn't at all because his character has never killed anybody. He's not intimidating. He's just the puppet master. And I love, in hindsight, I love that scene where he goes into the hardware store and he's being super creepy to this like 16-year-old girl and doing the cuckoo and the hands over the eyes as if that's going to be like the meme from the movie, and the girl just completely no sells it and just like, Dad, the creep is here again. And it's just like, I feel like they cast him for that scene knowing that like it's going to be a flip. It's going to flip the Cage idea, right? We're going to get him really crazy here, but no one's going to sell it at all. And I think that works so well for this character who is essentially just a middleman.
Well, there's also something to that point. Like, the movie starts, right, with we don't know, but we eventually find out. He approaches young Micah Monroe out in the snowy field, and he's just like, oh, I've got my long legs onto it. And, like, it's a very creepy, unsettling scene, and it hard cuts to the title, right?
This is the birthday girl.
We got the whitest house.
Like, an hour later in the movie, we cut back, and she just like, okay, like, she's just like there to take his picture, right?
Yeah.
She's like not. So again, like the same kind of thing. It's just like, it's a guy who really maybe wants to be creepy. Maybe it's just who he is. Like, maybe he's not trying to be creepy. Maybe that's just like the guy, right?
Yeah, it's someone who got really into glam rock in the 70s and
T-Rex, you know.
Yeah, I think there was a Lou Reed. I think my partner pointed out a Lou Reed picture above the mirror. Yeah, and like listened to a lot of his records backwards probably and got really into it. And fortunately for him, it turned out that in this world Satan is real and was speaking backwards through those records, I guess.
Mike, any other scenes you want to talk about?
No, not necessarily. I do like the one that Chris brought up about the hardware store though, because it does sort of, it is the movie kind of taking a moment to like show you how grounded it is, right? And in that way, I feel like it shows you how kind of crazy the Cage character like actually is, right? Like he fits into his world of the rest of the movie, but he does not fit into like the real world of that scene. So I thought that was very interesting kind of contrast with basically the rest of the movie. Like I feel like the entirety of the movie feels weird, and that movie feels like we're that little girl and we're like suddenly Cage wandered into us watching another movie and it's like he doesn't belong here at all.
Yeah.
Like what the hell? So I appreciated that. Like maybe a movie needed more of that, more of Cage like buying his shit or finding his stuff or making his dolls and things, and you know, maybe that would have sold something a little differently. But overall, I still had a really good time. I still enjoyed the movie. I'm still looking forward to rewatching it. Like I feel like it's really up there. You know, if I've been maybe a little overcritical.
No, I feel like this is another one of those episodes where like we're meaner. Like it sounds more negative about the movie, but it's like a movie that we all liked and could love if a couple things were different.
Yeah. I will say I also think the movie needed like one more scene of tension. You know, we got in the very opening, which is unrelated to Longlegs, we got the partner getting a surprise headshot, and then we got a pretty good but distant head explosion with the double tap that the mom gave to the absolute dead meat character who she might as well have come onto screen wearing a red shirt.
That's a Star Trek reference for any of you non-nerds out there.
I thought we were going to get a House of the Devil kind of head explosion there when mom was creeping up to the side of the car. I think the movie could have used like one moment of like really in like just intensity to drive the plot forward and make you. And it's again, it's the failing of Oz Perkins movies that keep me from really loving them, is that the movie just kind of has this 70s esque snoozy pace to it. I just think the movie needed one more moment of high tension or even just like violence for you to sit up in your seat a little bit and go, oh, like there's danger. But if you're in the mood for like a lazy Sunday horror movie when you're snowed in, I think.
Oh, hey, there's Snowden again.
Yeah,
Nice.
when you're, I think this is kind of that kind of lazy winter horror movie. But I just think go into it with the expectation that it is not Silence of the Lambs, that it is very much its own thing, and I think you will get more out of it on your first watch than we did, and I do think that all of our appreciation of it will go up slightly upon a rewatch, and I'm excited to rewatch
I
it.
think
Honestly,
of the three of us, I seem to have liked it the most. I mean, I think it's really good. I think it's very much worth watching. I hope that you didn't listen all the way through, having not seen it, if you're still listening. So, I mean, do what you want to do, I guess. But yeah, I think what you just said, Chris, like, don't go into any movie expecting anything. Just sort of like go in and just like with an open mind if you can.
it's hard. It's hard to avoid the hype sometimes.
Sure.
Man, I thought this was going to be about spiders because of the title. I don't even want the title, Joey. Spoil these titles.
What I think that my big takeaway from this episode is that, like, I just sort of now think of Longlegs as like a sad man. Like, he's just kind of like a helpless. Like, again, like he's like you said, Mike. He's kind of like middle management. He's just like, he's not Satan. He's just making dolls that like puts a thing that Satan imbued with evil in it, right? And then like down the food chain even more is Alicia Witt, but she somehow seems, because she at least she murders someone. You know what I mean? Like, we see her with a shotgun, right? So like she performs an act of evil. Longlegs is just like, I'm a doll maker.
I wanted to ask you guys what you thought the title meant. I have an idea, but I'm gonna throw this out to you guys first.
I mean, he references like, I've got my long legs on today. Like, I think it's just like he's like a creepy older man who tries to relate to children. I also just think it kind of sounds cool. Like, I don't know that there's necessarily more to it than that, but maybe there is.
Yeah, I was thinking Daddy Longlegs
Same.
at first, obviously,
Exactly.
with the spider thing and stuff, but it's, I don't know, it's they just kind of, it's like a misnomer, right? Then they just call, oh no, he calls himself Longlegs
yeah.
in the letters. He signs it Longlegs and things, but like, yeah, it could be the whole connection to the children thing where it's like he feels like a kid, but he's got longer legs than them.
That is one of the things I was thinking of, but the daddy long legs thing is what I ended up coming up with in the shower when thinking about the movie, where everyone does their best thinking. Because he is he is sort of weirdly Micah Monroe's father figure, right? In a weird way, and he is also this. If you're thinking about a daddy long legs, right? This thing that kind of sneaks in under your door. And is in your house, and looks real creepy and gross, but is actually not that intimidating. When it comes to spiders, is actually pretty docile compared to other spiders that can do things. And yeah, I got that's kind of where I landed on what the title was as well.
Well, go see Long Legs. It's going to be a theaters thing for a while because it's very successful, and people in horror seems to have, pardon the pun, long legs. So, I mean, they're...
How are they going to bring him back for Long Legs too? Because it's made enough money
Prequel,
for it to
baby.
happen.
I mean, he's still
Oh, fuck me.
alive, right?
Yeah.
No,
He's dead as fuck.
He's dead. Yeah.
What about a spirit, though?
Maybe it's trapped in a ball somewhere.
Yeah. Hey, in this universe,
The blood
anything's
that
on the table.
coated Micah Monroe's shirt congeals into a ball.
You could be like a legacy character. There's like a new Longlegs. Satan has more work to do, right? Yeah. It could have been multiple people in multiple states. Satan's busy. I love how he doesn't like to get his hands dirty. He always gets people to do shit for him, and he's just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability, Mr. President.
That's right.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us. And you're also welcome for giving you the outlet to talk through your stuff.
Thank you for having me, even though I half invited myself onto this episode. It was more of like I need to talk about this movie with somebody if you haven't recorded yet. But honestly, I think these discussions are important because I think this has honestly elevated my opinion of the movie a little bit. I think you sometimes have to get those thoughts out of your head, and I'm glad I could do it in a slightly public environment, and thank you for letting me bounce some ideas off you. And it's honestly, Always a pleasure to come on and talk about. I think I make this pun every fucking time I'm on, and it's always unintentional. But it's always a pleasure to come on and talk about our national treasure, Nicolas Cage, because he is one of our finest actors, and more people should know that.
Mike, our next episode will be whatever Cage does next. Probably The Surfer, but maybe not. I have no idea. We'll be back at whatever time Cage does another thing. But our next episode, you and I will record together probably in 2 weeks, will be another Elvis movie. I think it's going to easy come, easy go. So we've got that. We just did a Charlize movie. We're going to do a handful more Charlize movies this summer to catch up on her. We're going to do more Elvis movies. But I think other than Charlize and now Elvis, Elvis is going to be ongoing. I think we're otherwise caught up on everybody, right? So it's just, we're in pretty good shape.
Hanks says the cruise not until the next Mission Impossible if he survives filming.
You guys get to talk about de-aged Hanks soon.
Oh, we know.
Chris.
We know.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
You got to be on that horror show episode.
Go to Cage Club, let me poke around. We've got Chris's 2 shows now in the archives of Now and Again, but also Monkey Club. They're both out there if you want to go check those out. And Mike and I have a bunch of shows on there. cageclub.me/shows. Poke around. New episodes almost every day. Go check that out. But I'm Joey Lewandowski.
And I'm Mike Manzi.
And that is Dr. Chris Podcast. And we will see you next time right here on Cage Club.